Imagine living the most perfect day of your life, but not being able to escape it. Every time you close your eyes, the same day repeats itself. Would you feel blessed or trapped? I was thrown into a world where what I wanted most became my prison, and the only way out was to lose what I loved most. Want to know how I did it? Then stick with me till the end. If you're curious to find out what happens in this story and want more like it, hit like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support is crucial for more stories to be told. My life's just been one mistake after another. I'm not talking about huge tragedies, but those little choices, the quiet ones, that added up and brought me to where I am now. I work a job I can't stand, I'm surrounded by faces I barely know, and I spend nights staring at photos of better times. But there's this one day I can't shake. A perfect day when everything seemed like it was in place. I was happy. Well, at least I think I was. I replay that day in my head like it's a movie. Every laugh, every word, every ray of sunlight on my skin. Going back to that day's become an obsession. I constantly think, what if I could do it all over again? Fix what I messed up? That thought keeps me up at night. It eats me alive. Yesterday, while I was aimlessly wandering around after another shitty day, I stumbled across a street market. Among the booths, something caught my eye. A weird little thing, tucked between all the junk. I don't even know how to explain it, but it felt like it was staring right at me. An old lamp, maybe a mirror or a box, shining in a way that didn't match anything else around it. I just knew I had to have it. Like it was the answer I didn't even know I was looking for. With the object in my hands, I felt a weight that wasn't physical. Something seemed to be pulsing, like an invisible presence was waiting inside it. I took it home, unable to let go of it. My curiosity was eating me up. Why did it feel so alive? I spent hours just staring at every detail, trying to figure out what made it so unique. Then it happened. In the silence of the night, a soft light started to glow from the object. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me, but it quickly became clear that this was real. Before I could even react, a figure took shape in front of me. He didn't look monstrous, but there was something in his gaze that was unsettling, like he could see every corner of my soul.
"You called me,"
he said, in a calm, almost inviting tone. My instinct told me to run, but his words held me in place.
"I am the Djinn, and I can grant you a single wish, anything your heart desires."
I don't know if it was fear, hope, or desperation, but I stayed, and I listened. For a moment, I just sat there in silence. My hands were sweating, and the Djinn's presence seemed to fill the air, making it feel heavier. A wish? Anything I wanted? The idea was overwhelming. Should I ask for money, health, power? But before I could even think it through, the words slipped out.
"I want to relive the happiest day of my life."
It was almost a whisper, but enough for him to hear. The Djinn tilted his head, his eyes glowing like they knew more than I did. He didn't ask which day it was or why I wanted it. He just smiled, a smile that seemed to hold both amusement and pity.
"Your wish will be granted,"
he replied, his voice echoing inside my mind.
"but remember, wishes come with consequences."
Something in his tone unsettled me, but the thought of reliving that day blinded me to any warnings. He raised a hand, and I felt like time and space around me folded in on themselves. There was no light or sound, just this feeling like I was falling into something endless. Then everything went quiet. When I opened my eyes, I was there, back in my perfect day, exactly how I remembered it. I woke up to the sound of the wind gently blowing through the open window. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air. My body knew before my mind. I was back. I looked around, and everything was exactly how it was that day. The golden light coming through the room, the cozy warmth of the blankets, even the distant sound of laughter coming from the street. It was real. Every detail. I got up and moved like I was in a dream, touching the things around me to make sure they were really there. The people were there too. Familiar faces, voices I hadn't heard in years. Every conversation, every gesture was exactly how I remembered. It was like watching a memory come to life. My eyes filled with tears. but they were tears of joy. This is it. I'm here. It's perfect. I spent the day lost in that perfection. I relived every moment like it was the first time, savoring every detail. No worries, no pain. It was like life had given me a second chance. When night came, I lay down with a smile on my face, grateful for the miracle I'd been given. Little did I know, by morning, it would all start again. The sound of the wind, the smell of fresh coffee, the golden light coming through the window. It was all exactly like the day before. I opened my eyes and felt a strange tightness in my chest. Something was wrong. I got up and repeated the same movements, but this time with such a strong sense of déjà vu that it felt suffocating. I went out to the street and saw the same people, in the same places, saying the same things. Their expressions and gestures were identical. The laughter that once comforted me now felt like empty echoes. I tried to change something. I said different things, took different paths, but nothing seemed to change the course of the day. Everything just snapped back, like I was just a cog in a much bigger machine. When night fell and I lay down again, the discomfort grew. I knew what was going to happen. I closed my eyes, and even though I hesitated, the same sequence played out. When I woke up for the third time, the cycle was still going strong. The perfection of my happy day started to lose its shine, turning into something oppressive. It was like I was stuck in a dream I didn't know how to end. When I woke up for the fourth time, something was different. The smell of fresh coffee was still there, but it felt weaker. The golden light coming through the window didn't shine the same. I got out of bed with a growing sense of unease. As the day went on, I noticed small things had changed. The people I met had looks I didn't remember seeing before. It was like they were watching, waiting for something. At first, the changes were subtle. A strange smile, a longer pause in a conversation. But as the cycles went on, the changes started becoming more obvious. The streets seemed less alive, like the world was fading. One detail caught my attention. A wilting flower that had never been there before, in the place where everything was always perfect. Even scarier was the feeling of being watched. Some people who used to act normally now seemed focused on me. Their stares were blank but fixed. It was like the world, which used to embrace me, was slowly pulling away, revealing something darker underneath the surface. What once seemed like a perfect dream was beginning to disintegrate, and the idea that something was controlling all of this was becoming impossible to ignore. That feeling of being watched wouldn't leave me. The small changes in the scenery, the cracks that grew bigger with every cycle, were suffocating me. I didn't know what was happening, but something inside me knew I couldn't keep going like this. If I was trapped, then I needed to understand what was holding me here. I had to explore the boundaries of this place, figure out how far it stretched. I decided to step off my usual path. I took streets I'd never walked before, went into stores I hadn't noticed before. Each new step took me further from what I knew, but the world around me stayed, strangely, the same. Every corner was a repeat of another, like the whole city was stuck in the same loop I was. I tried different things, sat in different squares, watched people up close, even talked to them in different ways, but it was always the same. Nothing changed. When the day ended and I started heading home, I realized it didn't matter. I was stuck. But what bothered me more was that the more I tried to change things, the more I realized the Djinn was in control of it all. It was like he was watching me silently, waiting. In my search for answers, I found others like me stuck in this cycle. There weren't many people, but they all seemed just as lost. Some were calmer, like they'd already accepted their fate. Others, like me, were desperate to get out, trying to find a crack in this perfect world, an escape that could set us free. I talked to some of these people, trying to figure out if there was a way out. They talked about their own happy days, the moments they chose to relive. Each one had a memory that kept them stuck here, something that made them wish for the same thing. And so, everyone was doomed to relive that day, not realizing they were being manipulated by the Djinn. I went looking for more answers, trying to connect with those who seemed to know more. Some were willing to help, others saw me as a threat. They defended the Djinn, saying he was giving us what we always wanted, a perfect world where nothing could go wrong. But I knew that wasn't true. Something was very wrong, and the Djinn wasn't the benevolent being he seemed to be. He was keeping us here, trapped, feeding off our emotions. I was just another prisoner in his game. The truth I started to realize was more terrifying than I could have imagined. The Djinn wasn't just granting our wishes, he was manipulating them. Each wish granted was a deeper trap, and the perfection that seemed to be the key to our happiness was, in fact, a mask for the darkness behind this world. The Djinn fed off our emotions. He created these perfect illusions, but they were empty. With every cycle that repeated, he drained more energy from our frustrations, our fears, our endless search for something that could never be found. What once seemed like a gift now revealed itself as a nightmare. The happiness I felt, the memories I relived, all of it was a game he played with my mind, creating a maze I could never escape from. Even worse was what I realized when I looked at the others trapped here. They were so consumed by the idea of perfection that they didn't even notice the manipulation. Some even defended the Djinn as a benevolent figure, believing he was giving them what they always wanted. But no one could see the truth, except for me, and maybe a few other souls who had started to question things. I was a victim, and now I knew the only way to escape was to face this truth. Now that I knew what was going on, the question was clear. How do I get out of this prison? The Djinn wouldn't just let us leave. He kept this cycle running because he needed us. But to escape, I knew I'd have to make a sacrifice. A sacrifice that would rip me back to the real world and force me to face the harsh truth of my life. The way out was right in front of me, but there was a price. The Djinn, in his cruelest form, revealed to me that the only way to truly escape this perfect cycle was to let go of what I loved most. My perfect day, the memory of when everything seemed to fall into place. The price of freedom was to release the one thing I believed could bring me peace. I hesitated. It was painful to think about. That day, that one day, had become my only source of hope. Letting it go meant losing the only thing that gave me any sense, any purpose. But as I looked at the Djinn, with his cryptic smile, I knew he was testing me. He wanted me to make the choice, wanted to see how far my will would go. I realized that my real life, with all its mistakes and flaws, was still worth more than the illusionary perfection he offered. The truth was, I couldn't live trapped in an endless cycle of forced happiness. It was time to fight for my freedom, even if it meant losing the only thing that kept me tethered to this world. The moment of decision had arrived. The Djinn, with his crooked smile and penetrating eyes, watched me like a predator watches its prey. He knew I was ready to try to escape, and he wasn't going to let that happen without a fight. The tension in the air was palpable. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew I'd need every ounce of my willpower to face him.
You have a choice, of course.
The Djinn said, his voice soft yet cruel at the same time.
Stay here, perfect, forever, or go back to your broken world with all the regrets and failures you fear so much.
I didn't hesitate. I was tired of chasing after an ideal that didn't exist, of living in an illusion. Facing my own mistakes would be hard, but it was the only way to reclaim my real life. I looked the Djinn in the eyes and said,
I choose my freedom.
He laughed, a low, contemptuous laugh.
You think you can challenge me? Everything you are, everything you were, is here. And you want to leave all of that behind?
Before he could react, the reality around me started to fall apart. The perfect world, the streets, the people, began to fragment like shattered glass. The Djinn tried to hold me back, but I was already stronger than he had imagined. The pain of loss, of letting go, was immense, but I couldn't turn back.
I'm no longer your puppet,
I said, as the last piece of this world disintegrated before my eyes. When the last fragment of the cycle fell apart, I crashed back into my world. The silence was deafening. I was back in my real life, but something was different. The freedom I had so desperately sought now had a bitter taste. I looked around, expecting to find comfort in my memories, but everything was empty, like time had been eroded while I was stuck in the Djinn cycle. The pain of losing my perfect day still haunted me. I couldn't remember exactly what was so special about that day anymore. Everything had become a distant blur. The streets, the people, the routine. It was all there, but nothing seemed to shine the same way. I had finally escaped, but at the cost of losing the one moment that gave me meaning. The emptiness bothered me. I knew nothing would ever be the same, and the choices I'd made throughout my life were starting to weigh on me again. What had I learned? That illusions can be tempting, but in the end, true freedom only comes when we face reality, with all its flaws and imperfections. I looked one last time at the object that had brought me to the Djinn. It was now lifeless, dull, as if worn out by time. I let it fall to the ground and watched it break, its magic finally dissipating. I was free, but somewhere a part of me still wondered, did I really escape? Or am I still somehow trapped in this perfect world? After everything that happened, the question still haunts me. Does true freedom really justify the pain of loss? Every choice, every sacrifice shapes us in ways we never imagined. But what about you? How far would you go to escape your own desires? If this story made you reflect, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Your support is crucial for stories like this to keep being told. See you on the next journey.